Hello friends, welcome to part 3 of BDD with Cucumber. In this session we will talk about the API automation and we will discuss how to call the API, verify API response, provide one service output to another either in request body or in request header using REST assured. Stay with me on this session to understand more on this topic. If you're starting on BDD or with Cucumber, watch my previous session on BDD with Cucumber. You can find the link in the I button in the top right corner. REST assured supports post, get, delete, options, patch, and head request and can be used to validate and verify the response of these requests. If you want to learn and understand more on how we design the API resources, watch my session on Richardson maturity model for APIs. Let's create a service which we can use for verification in our BDD. Here I'm using start.spring.io. For creating a new project, we'll put group name as com.tanwar, artifact say order. We'll be using Spring Boot 2.3 and Java 8. And the dependencies that we are going to use is web. Once we have the dependencies ready for the project, click generate. We have the project that we downloaded from start.spring.io. We created a get mapping endpoint which will give us a list of orders for a particular date range. We have start date and end date. We accept them as a request parameter. In this example, we have hard-coded list of orders, and here we are filtering based on the date that we provided. We could have used JPA, but for the simplicity of this project, we are not using it. We just having the hard-coded list and filtering the response based on the requested start and end date. Let's give this project a run. Service is ready. Let's open the Postman. Filter the orders from 4th of June to 9th of June. We get all the orders. Alright, now we have the project ready that we want to test. Let's put the dependency in POM for rest assured. This is the dependency that we will be using for and close this order project. This is our test project. We'll open the Cucumber project. Once you have put the dependency in pom.xml, make sure that you put it before the JUnit dependency in your pom.xml so that we get the correct version of Hemcrest. As per the REST assured documentation, in order to use REST assured effectively, it is recommended to statically import methods that we see here. But as a programmer, I would advise not to use static imports. It makes your code less readable. Usage of static imports should be as minimal as possible. It is useful for a situation when you need frequent access to few static objects from one or two classes. Overusing static imports can result in a code that is difficult to read and maintain. Now we have our REST project ready and our test project is also ready since we added the dependency in the POM. Before we proceed to feature file and we start implementing BDD style verification using Cucumber, let's do in a simple test case how we can do it. So start with rest assured.get. We'll specify the URL, that is orders. If you do not specify the host, it will default to localhost.8080. Then we say what do we want to validate? Inside the body, match a value of a specific attribute in the response. So we'll specify the path, that is the order number. See the response that we have. We have order number in a list. We will say matchers dot has items. Since we have this element available in every object inside an array, we'll specify what do we expect. Before we do that, let's specify the date range that we want to search. Let me take it from the URL. We can expect 115 and 116 order numbers. For the sake of argument, I'll say 117 and see how it behaves. Run as JUnit. It says there is an error that it is expecting collection 15 and 17, but we got 15 and 16. So if we make it correct and give it a run again, and this test case should pass. Yeah. So it is actually calling the service with this data and expecting this output from the attribute order number. Now let's do this in BDD style in a feature file. Now let's create a feature file for order management, which will have a scenario to list the orders for a particular date and validate the response. So let's start off with creating a feature file. Say order management. We'll start with feature. We'll write the scenario, get the list of orders. Now we write the given condition. I have a start date 6th of June and end date 9th of June. When I search for the orders in our system, then search should result in success with code 200 and response should return a list of order numbers. From our previous lessons, we understand that how we specify a data table. We start with a pipe, and since we are expecting the orders number, we'll put the order numbers 115 pipe 116. Let's give this feature file a run, and this will give us the stubs which we can use for writing our test cases. So let's copy them. If you want to understand more how this feature file works, you can refer to my sessions on BDD with Cucumber. You can find the links to those in the top right corner in the I button. So for this feature, we'll create the step definitions. Since it is a new feature file, so we'll create a new step definition, order step definition, and we'll paste those here. We'll organize the imports. In the first given conditions, we have the start date and end date. So we'll say start and end date response code. We'll define two variables, start date and end date, and we'll set them here. Set this dot start date equals start date dot end date equals end date, and here we'll make a service call. We know how to do it. Rest assure.get and the service name, and we will replace the values with the variables that we have, like so. We will create a reference of this function that is of type response from rest assured, and in then we will assert the response dot then. So this gives validable response, and with validable response we can validate the status code like so, response code. Here we can verify the output of the API, and for validating the service response we will use the same code construct that we used in our simple test, that is dot body on our validatable response, and we'll provide the path and the matcher item that we want to verify on. So we have validatable response dot body, and we'll use path and the matcher. So path that we have is order number, and we have matchers dot has items, since it is a list. So we'll say before that we need to convert this data table into a list of integers so that we can pass it here and verify, or an array, because this takes an array of items. Now let's convert this data table into an array, because this needs an array of items which we can verify on. Data table dot as list dot stream. So we'll be converting this list of string into a list of integers dot map element integer dot parse int element, and then we'll collect into a list collectors dot to list. So we'll take this into a variable list of integer order numbers, and we have to convert into to array. Let's give this a run and see if it is working. And it ran one scenario 4 steps successfully, in which we had the start and end date, and we searched for the orders in the system, and the search resulted in 200 status code, and we had the list of order numbers in the API response as given in the data table. So if we change the status code, say for example to 400, it will throw an error. Cucumber feature, it will throw an error saying expected is 400 but we got 200, like so. And if I revert it to 200 again and change the value to 17, and it will say again that we were expecting 15 and 17 but we got 15 and 16. Guys, we have understood a way where we are providing the query parameters inside of a get URL. This can be done using given, and we can provide the params given dot params. So here we are defining the parameters that we have in our request, and we can do chaining of params. And since we have to use the return type of this operation in when condition, so we have to do is see first which return type this returns, that is the request specification. So we'll first create a variable like we have done for these, and we will assign the variable here. And now we have to do is we have to make a get call. Since we have all the references here, we'll specify when dot get, and in the get we specify the URL that we want to hit. And since we don't need this, we'll comment it for now, and we'll also comment. We'll assign the response object to this operation, and the rest remains the same. That is, we validate the status code and we validate if we have the right elements in the response. Let's give this feature a run, and it should run successfully. Now let's add another scenario which will give you an order number which has a price greater than 8,000. Get order price greater than 8,000. Given, when, and then will remain the same. We'll copy from the above scenario. And the condition that changes is the order number should be 115, because if you look at the postman, order number 115 is the only order which has a price greater than 8,000. Generate the stub. We can do that by running this feature file. So this is the only missing step, so we can copy this and put it in our step definition. Okay, so let's remove the stub. Let's write the validation. So it is like validatable response dot body, find the order which has a price greater than 0. So we'll use find all, and in curly braces we'll write it dot price greater than 8,000 dot order number matcher equal to say 115. The output of this operation is a list of order numbers. So instead of equals to, we need to use has items, and once we give this a run, it will run perfectly. So now we have two scenarios, 8 steps, and so we are filtering the order by price in this new scenario. Let's extend this example by adding a response time validation to this scenario. So we'll say and response should be under 1000 milliseconds. Now we have the scenario file ready, and let's give this a run. We'll get the stub for the last AND condition. We'll copy this and put it in our step definition file. We'll use the same reference for validating the time. Matchers dot less than, the value you can give is time, right? Since this guy don't accept integer value, we need to give it a long. So we'll change it in the value here, long, and we have to provide the reference of the correct primitive type. And if we run it again, it should run successfully. We got 2 scenarios which passed, and we got 9 steps, all of them passed. Alright, so now let's try a scenario where we take response of one service and provide an attribute from that response to another service to validate the data. So let's create a feature which is order shipping, and we have a scenario, say get shipping address for an order, and we have a given and when and then. So given is we have order number 115, and we are assuming that it is present in the system, and when we call a shipping service, the shipping address provided here should be available in the response. The one way of doing this is the one we have done it. The another way is using a background. We can split these two conditions in a background and it will result the same. The difference here is just the way we are presenting in our feature file. So let's give this feature a run. Let's copy the stubs and create the step definition for these. Before we proceed on how to write the test cases, let's first understand the service that we have. Another endpoint which accepts order number as a path variable, and this is calling a service which will pull the order based on the order number that we have. We're trying to retrieve all the orders from our system, and from there we are filtering the orders based on the input order number, and this will give us an optional. And from the optional, we are using or else operator, which is it will return you the value if present. Otherwise, it will give you the default value that we have. It could be null, it could be default initialized value. But here I have given order as an empty object. But the ideal case would be we should throw an exception here if it is not present. This is one service that we will be calling in this feature file. Once we verify the order, now we have to pull the order shipping details. So here we'll specify order number in this URL, and this will give us the shipping address. Let's discuss the step definition for order shipping step. First we are doing is, in our given condition, we are setting the path variable order number for the service that we need here, like so. And then we are giving a get call to the service and saving the response in the response attribute, which is of type response. And then we are extracting the attribute order number from the response and saving it into order number. And then for the address service, we need to have the path variable order number. So we are setting it like this. And then in the when, we are making API call and putting the response in the response object. And in the final then condition, we are validating the address that we get from the service, from the second service, and matching it with the one we have in our step. Let's give this feature a run. It executed 4 steps successfully, and if we change the value of address here, and we give it a run again, our last step will fail. The expected is Dwarka Delhi 1, and actually we're getting from the service response as Dwarka Delhi. So this is how we can pass response of one service into another. If we want to troubleshoot the response that we are getting from a service, use log function response.then.log.body. This will log the body of the service response for the service number 2, that is the address service. Let's execute the feature file. So here we have the service response, and here we have the Dwarka address, and which we are comparing with our step value. This logging of a service response will be very helpful when we are debugging or we are trying to understand what our service response with the input parameter that we are providing in this test case. In rest assured.given, we have discussed about the path variables and the parameters, that is the request parameters. We can also provide headers. This will be the header name and this will be the header value. This calls the end of BDD with Cucumber Part 3 session. In this session, we learned about API automation. How shall we call an API, provide one service response into another? How shall we validate the response of an API using body function and provide the matcher attribute with the values there? I would recommend to visit this page for rest assured, and this has more options we can understand. However, we have covered which we'll be using in our day-to-day automation of our web services, but it's a good idea to give a quick look. Thank you for joining me on this session, and in the next session we'll be talking about web automation, where we'll have an application and we'll validate using Selenium. So stay with me on this next session. Please like and subscribe my channel for more videos.